Until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened, and that is by Anatole. So, welcome again to The Profitable Photographer with Lucy Dumas. I'm so excited to have a conversation with Angela Lawson today. I've been trying to get her on my show for a while, and she's been super busy, but finally I reached out to some pet photography groups and said, I need more pet photographers on my show. And she said, I finally have the time. So today's a good day. And it's such a luxury to be able to sit with people who teach all over the country, all over the world, to have one-on-ones with those people that others have learned so much from. So, yeah, I'm excited, Angela. Before I introduce her, I want to remind you I'm on YouTube and all the podcast places. And I so appreciate when you subscribe. And also, if you want a 20-minute chat, uh, talk about pricing or website or anything I can support you in, just go to lucydumascoaching.com and um, there won't be any pressure. Like it's not like, oh, and then I'm going to try to trick you into being coached by me. Of course, if we're a match made in heaven, I'm always open to that too. But I just love to support people. All right, so let me tell you about the lovely Angela. She is an international award-winning photographer. Phew, that's huge. A certified professional photographer with PPA, and she's also a craftsman and a master with PPA. She has earned her accredited professional of animal injury degree. Did I say that kind of crazy, Angela?
Yeah, yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yes, with the International Society of Animal Photographers. So she knows what she's talking about. She's training to be a PPA judge. So she's done and is doing all the things. And she's got her art on display and she's a pet photographer. So just if you can tell us a little about how long you've been in business and where you're located and just a little about how you decided to be a pet photographer. And so I'm going to give you like 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I've been in photography for now, I think it's going on about 28 years total. So quite a while. Started originally, my goal was is to actually be a pet photographer, but in my very first professional session was actually pets. It was a set of six little Australian cattle dogs.
Uh,
And that's what I really, really wanted to do. But back 28 years ago, that wasn't a feasible thing to do just that. So
right.
I branched out and, kind of did everything. And, that meant weddings and seniors and families and even sports, and I did everything. Um, and then we moved to Grand Rapids, and that was about 15 years ago. And that was when I was able to actually finally see that I could narrow it back down.
Uh,
And so that's when I started focusing back down on pets. And so now it's mainly people with their pets. So I
I
still
need,
do some people.
I need to pause a sec.
Yeah. And we're starting to get it here too.
Okay,
Um,
I had to
but
pause
yeah,
because I had to cough, but we're back now. So thank you, Angela, for understanding. All
yeah.
right. So
No, not a problem.
I was gonna ask you how you think doing all of those other things has benefited your success in the animal photography world.
It definitely helped me to be a better pet photographer in like lighting, posing, um, understanding, like direction of light and, being able to not just, you know, put an animal in front of the camera
Hmm.
and snap a picture. I was able to take all of those human techniques and, say, oh, we need to take that and utilize that when we're creating pet portraits. So I was able to transfer all of what I learned as a portrait photographer for a person and transfer that over to pets. And I did have the benefit of, previous to becoming a photographer, I had actually worked in the pet industry as a veterinary assistant. So I
Hmm.
also brought some background from working with animals into that as well. So,
I love that. I dabbled in a lot of different things and, learned. Um, Sorry, my brain just clicked off. But anyway, yes, doing other genres can be really helpful because, like
yeah.
with a human, you can direct them more than you can a pet, or maybe more than you can a little child. So, um, yeah. So, why were you able to specialize in pets when you moved to Grand Rapids?
Um, I think because I had always lived in smaller communities
Mm,
up
okay.
until moving to Grand Rapids. Moving to Grand Rapids, there is, first of all, Grand Rapids is a huge art community, art city. So they're much more open to spending money on art. And as a cultural community, everybody's got, pets, and they've got a little bit of disposable income. And it was just sort of generating that, you know, getting people to kind of put the two together. And we're in a generation right now where there are a lot of people who don't necessarily have children, but they have pets, and they
Hmm.
treat those pets even better than some of us treat our children. So I was moving into that era of seeing that now, whereas I hadn't seen it when I first started.
Got it.
And so I utilized that, and pushed forward, kind of moving into that, saying, okay, let's push that. Let's make them realize what they have and what they want, and kind of push them into what they want.
Right.
And so that seemed to work. Um, and it's continuing to work now. And I've actually just this past year, after 20 some years of having a retail studio, I actually let go of my lease, and I'm actually in the process of building a mobile studio, like a mobile groomer who
Hmm.
goes to your clients. I'm going to go to my clients now because everybody
Brilliant.
wants everything coming to them fast. It's like everybody wants
Mhm.
to be catered to. They get their groceries brought to them. They want their groomers to come right to their door for their dogs to be groomed. I'm going to go right to their door and pull my
Yep.
studio up. They can bring their pet right out and get all the fancy portraits right there in their driveway.
That's brilliant.
So that's my next step with
Love
this.
it.
So I'm trying to continue that flow,
Hmm.
with my business.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think also maybe 15 years ago, I started to feel that pet photography was opening up as an opportunity for people, um, and that people would, from exactly what you said about um, people treating their pets like gold and like their kids, and that people, if we as an industry started offering wall art and other, I don't know if that's what you do, but for me, when I've
Yep.
talked to people, um, most of them that have been pet photographers, I teach them how to sell large portraits, and they're averaging many, four and occasionally five-figure sales. So I think it makes total sense to be in a location where uh, having art of the furry babies is something they'd be open to. And also just the simple fact that the time has come. It's like people didn't used to invest in art baby portraits. And then, that opened up,
Yeah.
and Geddes got people realizing there was lots of ways to photograph newborns and such. So, yeah, yeah. All right. So, I know you said that you don't just photograph dogs and cats. And so you photographed. So, what other kinds of pets? And do you have a fun story or two about some special
Yep,
different animals?
I photograph a lot of different animals. I do reptiles and snakes and all the little pocket pets, type of things like rabbits and guinea pigs and all the little hamsters and, sugar gliders and all those fun little furry creatures. Um, I did have an interesting, because I teach so often, and, a lot of what I teach is based on the behavior of the animals because I studied a lot of behavior, like, over the course of the years that you teach, spend a lot of time studying the behavior of the animals that you're bringing into the studio and, what you're teaching about and things like that. And one of the things that I'm constantly teaching in my classes, regarding the behavior is always being patient, with the animals and letting them get to know you and that type of thing. Well, I had a prairie dog come into the studio one time, and I like to meet animals before a session. I'll usually bring most dogs come in during a pre-consultation so that I can meet them ahead of time. And, I'll often have even smaller animals come in ahead of time and I'll meet them once when I do a pre-consultation with the owners. I didn't do that with this particular pet. It was a friend of a friend's. And so we set up a session. And so I said, I'll just get to know the animal a little bit ahead of time because,
Okay.
the friend of a
Well,
friend said, oh, this is,
so I have to interrupt you for a
go
second.
ahead.
So you said
Yeah.
it was a prairie dog.
Yes. So this is
People,
a
wait,
prairie dog.
so
Yes.
people can have pets, prairie dogs as pets.
Yeah, we're in Michigan, mind you.
Okay.
So it's different rules because like yeah, I went to Wyoming and in Wyoming you can have a skunk as a pet. In Michigan you can't. See,
Okay.
so what it is typically you can have pets that are not native to you can have animals as pets that are not native to your state. So
Interesting.
a lot of states will have like, for lack of a better term, they breed certain animals as pets in other states that you can have.
Okay.
So yes, in Michigan you can have a prairie dog as a
Prairie dog.
pet, and they're yeah.
I don't even really have
So
the reality on prairie dogs, but okay, now I get back to your
yeah.
story. I was just like a prairie dog as a pet. Okay, okay,
Yeah, I know it is. And I forget sometimes when I tell this story that there are people out there going, why in the world? Because they're rodents to half the country,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Okay,
so,
so back to
right.
the story.
So, yes. So she brought the prairie dog in, and the whole time my understanding is this prairie dog is very friendly. Well, this prairie dog is very friendly to her owner, not real very friendly to the
Hmm.
rest of the family or to anybody else. So she lets it out because I typically say, okay, let the animal out and kind of let it get familiar with its surroundings and that. And it, is running around a little bit, but it hasn't warmed up to anybody else in the room. And she's there, I'm there. My friend came, my friend came that basically is a friend with both of us. And the woman's daughter, who I thought it would be friendly with, and it wasn't. Um, and 15 minutes later, and this thing is still going around, and it's kind of they have these little noises they make when they're not really, liking anybody. The
Hmm.
only person it'll go up to is the owner. So I finally said, well, because I usually sit on the floor waiting for an animal to come up to me. And this is pretty common with most dog photographers. We just sit and wait, and the dog typically will come up to us when it's ready. And, we can feed it treats and things like that. So I finally told the owner, why don't you just pick it up and I'm just going to have you work with it, and because I had all these little sets built, to have the prairie dog, in these little sets and stuff like that to photograph. And she's like, well, wait, he seems like he's getting, kind of used to you and stuff. And he had come up and he was starting to rub his body against my leg. So
Hmm.
I said, okay, we'll see how he's doing. And she's like, I think he just wants his butt scratched now. I think he's making friends with you. Okay. So I reached down to kind of slide my hand over the top of his head and back down his back. And I was just going to kind of scratch his butt. And he whips his head around and clamps onto my arm with his
Ooh.
little teeth. They're not little teeth, actually. And he's hanging from my arm. I'm like, oh, okay. So, and I'm thinking the whole time, this is not going at all like I would have told any of my students to do this,
Right.
at this point. So I'm like, eventually I loosen him from my arm, and I'm like, I'm just going to go. Let me get myself cleaned up, patched up, or whatever. And, so I went and cleaned up, wrapped my arm. We moved on. We got the session done. I sent them on their way.
What's the
Um,
most unusual animal you photographed? I mean,
the
that's right up
most
there, but
un-
or
the most
surprising.
unusual actually was quite a long time ago. I don't even have, I can't say I have the pictures left because they were on film. Um, this was so long ago. I actually got to photograph, it was a baby kangaroo during
Mm.
Christmas time. Um, my husband was playing Santa, and I was photographing at a vet clinic that she had Santa pictures done for all of her clients, and they could come in and bring their animals in, to have Santa pictures done with their, they could bring their kids and their animals and stuff like that. But the vet was actually the one who had this baby kangaroo.
Mm.
How she ended up with it, like it was somebody else had somehow obtained it or whatever, and she had to take it in because it was not being cared for properly. How they had obtained it, I don't know. Um, but I got to photograph my husband holding, as Santa, holding the little baby kangaroo. So that's actually, the
A fun
most
story.
unusual. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it was my husband that was playing
Yeah,
Santa.
that's awesome. Okay, so one of the things that you have started specializing in is what you're calling legacy sessions. So,
Mhm.
question number one, what is a legacy session?
Legacy sessions are actually they're sessions that are designed for um, basically the like senior age pets or the terminally ill pets that don't have a lot of time left.
Mhm.
It doesn't
Mm.
they don't have to be ones that are like right there on the edge. And I actually encourage people now not to wait to do these until like the very, very end.
Mhm.
Um, but that's what they're designed for is, they're basically memory sessions,
Okay.
to have those last memories.
So, is this something that you actively promote?
I do now.
Hmm.
Because it was designed when I created these legacy sessions. I created them about 13 years ago, and it was created around one of my good friend's dogs, who she came to me, and Kepley was he was not doing well,
Hmm.
and she really this was her heart dog, her life,
Hmm.
her everything. She had been she'd been going through a hard time with some health problems of her own, and this dog had been through thick and thin with her. She'd gone through a divorce. She lost just a lot of things, and
Yes.
she'd been going through health problems, and there was just so much, and this dog had been there for her for everything, and she just couldn't imagine losing the dog. And so she wanted pictures of Kepley, and she wanted pictures of her and Kepley together.
Hmm.
And so that's how these sessions started, was with Kepley. And so these sessions were basically started to honor Kepley. And so they were originally called Kepley's Legacy.
Hmm.
And so then I just started calling them Legacy Sessions.
So how do you promote
So,
them? How do you market the legacy as a special event, or do you?
they're actually they're in my well, I don't actually have them on my website right now, but I do promote them like within groups. There's also an organization called the Tilly Project, which the Tilly Project is nationwide. Um, that you can go on their registry and look for your state, and
Hmm.
within your state, you can find photographers that provide end of life sessions. And I'm actually listed as one of the photographers within that group as well.
Hmm.
So you kind of market that way as well.
Mhm. So this isn't,
Locally,
okay, hold on. This isn't a
oh,
volunteer organization like Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. This is
n-
a connecting
no,
with
the Tilly
you.
Project, yeah, the Tilly Project was actually designed or created by someone who basically, it's just a big network. They they say basically, if you would like to join, you can charge for your sessions, you can donate your sessions, that's all up to you. We're just providing a service to allow you to network
Got it.
through your type of thing, so
Okay.
that they're just offering that service.
All right.
So
So you
um
said within groups. So what kinds of groups are you suggesting
um i
you let people?
I network through my own local, like, Facebook groups, as
Hmm?
far as we have a bunch of little burbs and stuff like that around here. So if I see somebody that's looking for someone, I'll comment, and then I'll private message them with all my information.
Got it.
I actually was featured on one of our local news
Mm.
um, stations. It had piggybacked off of 2 years ago when I had won, or I'd been a silver medalist in our IPC. I had sent in a um, just a news blurb type thing, but that got piggybacked because one of the newscasters there had picked up on something I had worded in the story. They contacted me, and I ended up getting a full um, sit down interview type thing with them on the news.
That's
So,
awesome. So the action you took with
yeah.
that is that you did a press release basically for your
Yes. Yes.
paper, which back in the day, uh, pre-social media, a lot of successful photographers, especially in towns like my town is a town of 3 million. So a press release is not necessarily going to get any action. But
Right. Yeah.
in other size towns, sending in information about what you've won, what you do, grand openings, different kinds of things has always been, and now I think an overlooked aspect. So, congratulations
Yeah.
for doing that and
Thank you.
getting that
Yeah.
results. Okay. So, do you connect with vets or any other people, groomers? Do you network and let them know you've got this special end of life partners? Have you done anything like that?
Yeah. I have been. I backed off a little bit this past year. I had mentioned my son had an accident, and so I've been his primary caregiver for the last 8 months. So I haven't been doing as much recently. But as soon as I get my mobile studio up and running, then I will actually be marketing more again, because I think this will make it even more convenient.
Yes.
Because I do actually get, it's about 50-50 actually. Some people like to actually have these sessions right directly in their homes, but
Mhm.
some like to actually come to the studio and just have intimate portraits between themselves and the dogs. Just, on sort of a plain solid backdrop that just focuses on the two of them, the dog and the owner type of thing. So now I can take the studio to them,
Mhm.
and they can have both if they want it.
That's
We
awesome.
can go and we can focus on the dog and the dog's happy places in the house, but then
Mhm.
we can go back up to the studio and focus on the emotion of the two of them intimately in the studio. So they'll be able to have the best of both worlds, kind of.
Mhm.
So I think that'll be fun.
So, do you photograph legacy animals? I mean, of course, they may not be running, maybe they will, but maybe they won't be running and catching balls and things like I have a neighbor. I sit on my porch and I watch the world go by, especially the pets and the kids. And she has an older dog that won't go for a walk. So she carries him several blocks and then puts him down and then he walks home. He'll go home.
Yeah.
He just won't go away. Anyway, that's a nothing about anything, but he's an older dog. Anyway, do you besides, the physical activities that they may or may not be able to do, what is the difference in how you photograph or do you?
Um, there's actually, I do a lot because
That's different.
yeah, it's different for every person, and every animal, because I want to focus on all aspects of what the owner wants. Like, do they want to focus on the everyday activities, to remember those activities by, or is that too heart-wrenching for them to focus on the fact that
Hmm.
the dog can't walk anymore?
Yeah.
And so, it's so I want them to remember the happiest moments. And if
Hmm.
that brings too much sadness, because most of the time what the owners are going to get when they now purchase legacy sessions from me is we're creating an album for them.
Okay. That was going to be
So
a
it's
question.
it's yeah, they're usually going to probably get a wall portrait of some type, either with just the animal or with the two of them together. But I'm typically creating an album of all of the images for them. That's my goal, at least.
Hmm.
Because why photograph all of these? Why put the dog through all of this if you're not going to go away with an album of all of those images?
Right.
Because that's a lot. So that's really my goal for the day,
Uh,
is to put an album together for them. And I talk to them about this ahead of time.
mhm.
And so I have a couple different packages, based on, like, whether we do like a coffee table style book versus a hardcover album. but at least I want them to walk away with those images, and I want them to be printed images.
Hmm.
So, but I can keep the cost down for them in two way, by doing like a coffee table style. But I still want them to have printed images.
Right, right.
So,
And so to me, just because the book itself is a little less money doesn't mean I work any less. So I'm hoping you still get
right.
really well, no matter what. I think you will.
Yeah.
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 Well, I love hearing that
Yeah.
because I think even in the pet space, I think it's a challenge for people to really get that art and storybooks of people's pets. Um, People will get daily joy out of that. One of my friends slash coaching clients just won photography of the year or photograph of the year, sorry, for our local chapter of PPA, and it's a hotly contested print competition every
Mm,
every other month. So it's not like, oh yeah, we have a handful. And it was a dog running uh, on the shore of the ocean, and that particular part of the beach has long reflective sand when it's low tide, and so the dog is mirrored. And anyone would love that photograph, not just the owner, but how special for the owner to have
yeah.
the dog as art in their home. So it,
Yeah.
I think even it's even more, would you say, like some people like, oh, I don't want portraits of me or my family in my house because my friends will think I'm conceited or something, which I don't buy that. But with a pet, you can't say that. It's like everyone
Right.
loves dogs. I mean, I have
Yeah.
special dogs in the neighborhood that drag their owners to my porch. Some of them know I'm there before they even see me. They're like, "Oh, Lucy's on the porch. Let's go." And
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
stare at you and they just give you their heart. And so, yeah, I love that you're doing that and that you're teaching that. So, anything else
Yeah.
to know about the legacy you've shared? um, some of your marketing ways and um, how you find out what they want, and you're sensitive to their feelings, and you encourage them to have art and books. Anything else someone would really love to know from you about the legacy portrait sessions or sales or anything, marketing, anything you can share?
Um, I would just say that I know a lot of people are nervous to consider doing them. It's kind of like the same as people say they can't go into the Now I Lay Me Down sessions. And so if you're a pet photographer, they don't want to go into these sessions because they're afraid they'll be too emotional and that. And I would just say it's okay. Like I've gone into sessions, and I don't know the owners any more than what I've, met them through the consultation and stuff like that. But it's okay to be emotional with them. You know, every time you meet somebody that you have a common interest in, when you automatically bond with a person that you have a common interest in.
Hmm.
So if you're a little emotional when you're talking with them about it, or you begin to comfort them, you know there's a bond there, and they're going to feel that bond immediately. Um, and I make a connection with every legacy pet owner that I've made friends with every session that I've done with legacy owners because I keep in touch with them.
Nice.
They don't just walk out the door when they've picked up their last, you know, their last product or whatever and walk out the door. Because I typically I keep in touch and I'll send an email like a month later saying, how are you doing? Are you feeling okay?
Mhm.
And this is a good way also, not to jump the gun and make it sound like a sales pitch, but have you looked at, are you thinking about getting another dog, and stuff like that? Because if you do keep in touch, who are they going to think of when they do get another dog?
Absolutely.
Because then they are going to probably going to come back to you at some point for the next dog,
Hmm.
and I offer watch me go programs,
Mm,
for puppies and kittens.
nice.
So there's another full year of, sessions when they get a puppy or a kitten. And so you want to establish that kind of relationship so that you get repeat clients,
Love it.
So yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing, which I hear from other guests on my show who are doing really well, is that you build relationships and you
Yeah.
genuinely care, and then you want to continue those relationships, and that leads to, especially with pets, um, sometimes they have more than one already. I'm like my neighbor lost her, it was a Cairn Terrier, Cairn.
Oh, yep.
And,
Yep.
heart broke, but within 6 months, she just could not live without another one of them. And so she found another little doggy that's not the same person, not the same personality, but it definitely fills her heart. And so I love that you care, but and that you use that as an opportunity to also market, because I think what we're doing is so valuable that we're
Yep.
actually giving people a gift when we do the work for them to find us and book us. That it's not a self-centered
Yep.
thing, it's generous. Um, I love that. So let me see.
Well, and like I said, I make friends with most of my clients anyway.
Right.
Half the time I then see them at a dog park or at the pet
Mhm.
store, or I mean, we just all end up. It's a community.
Yeah.
Anybody who's a pet owner becomes a community of people. So
Mhm. I love it.
yeah.
Um, so any other marketing in general? I love the things that you've shared already. Um, but I just wonder if there's something you've done in general with pet photography, potential clients to get the little fur babies coming through the door.
Um, I can't say that I have anything really new as far as that goes for dogs or cats. I do, I've done a little bit more with like snakes and reptiles because I've gone to like some of the reptile shows and marketed there
Hmm.
simply because, I mean, when you have a photographer that walks in the door to a reptile show and they're willing to handle the snakes and the reptiles, and you talk to each of the booth, people that are there, and, say that you actually will photograph their animals, and that if you're the type of person that's willing to do that, um, you'd be surprised at how many people that you actually can get interested. So that's another way to you know actually boost the business and add a little extra in if you're interested in stepping outside the box and doing, additional animals besides,
Got it.
because there's a market there for other animals,
Hmm. Yeah.
so I
So,
just know that there's not a lot of people that like to do, as
yeah.
as a lot of people say, nope ropes.
No what? No, nope.
Nope ropes.
Got it.
Yes, the snakes.
So, just to pass on a tip to my listeners that I've helped my coaching clients that have pets um, get a lot of people really fast is shows like uh, pet shows, art shows. If I were in a new community and I did pets and I needed money, I would find a farmer's market in the right neighborhood that allowed other vendors besides food, and I would do my enter to win option. And what that is there's a drawing for a 16 by 20, and then I say or 10 second place prizes. And so people fill out a form that helps me figure out who might be good clients. And then anybody that qualifies, at least for that first phone call, I call and I text and I say, congratulations, you've won one of the second place prizes, which is a session and money to spend on a portrait. And of course, one of those does get the bigger prize. But uh, one of my coaching clients, the first time she did it, and she had been doing art shows with her pets. So she just set up a booth with, instead of selling the prints off the walls, booking, and she got like 38 leads and did 15 sessions within the 3 months after that show. So that's one of those little things. You
Yeah.
have to do it right, or you can waste a lot of time. So, um,
Yeah.
well, I
Yeah.
anything else, like any hot tips, any like the thing that people always go, "Oh, I'm so glad I just learned this from you." Do you have something that you can
Hmm.
pass on to us? It could be about photography, um, could be about lighting, settings, some other
Um,
of your incredible knowledge and experience.
well, I would say always know as far as with pet photography, if you're just starting out, I always tell new pet photographers, um, if it's any animal, what no matter whether it's a dog or a cat, reptile or whatever, learn about the animal. Like,
Mhm.
if you're bringing a dog in and it's if you know anything about the breed or the mix of the breeds or whatever, look them up, become familiar with what is coming into I use the example of my own dogs because I actually foster for a husky rescue.
Okay.
And we have huskies, and so I've been involved with the husky community for a very long time. If you don't know anything about huskies, you're not going to know that they're runners and escape artists by nature. And so when I bring a husky into the studio, I lock the door behind them because they can push the door open and they can escape, and you're going to be chasing them for hours and things like that. So, know the breed that's coming in to see you, or know something about them. But not only so that you know their characteristics, but so that you can know enough to talk knowledgeably to the pet owner about them. Because
Right.
then the pet owner is going to feel more confident when they're talking with you.
Hmm.
That makes them want to work with you.
Right.
Because if they feel confident that you know what you're talking about their dog, that's going to make them feel more confident about you being a photographer too,
Absolutely.
because it just carries over. So, and that goes for any, whether it's a cat, whether it's a lizard, a snake, if you bring something else to the table besides your photography, that's going to just, impose more confidence, about you to them. You're more likely to get the job.
That makes sense. And to get referrals and have them come back and all the things. Yes.
Yeah.
So I love because the core that I like to teach people, whether it's on this podcast or sitting over lunch with photography friends or my coaching clients, is the importance of positioning ourselves as the trusted advisor. So what I just heard in that is that by knowing the different breeds, different ages, uh, different mixes, getting to know that pet specifically, you then are positioned as the advisor that they begin to trust. And then they trust you with your guidance, and then they trust you when you help them make purchases. So I love that you just like pointed out in your world how at one level how you fill that position. Sorry, speak, Lucy, as the trusted advisor. So I have a question and then another question um,
Okay.
before we wrap up. Number one, um, how you do, although you've had a family situation where you haven't been teaching uh, recently, but historically you're out there sharing your knowledge. So how
Yep.
can people get in touch with you? Maybe send you an email that says, I'd like to be on your list to be notified of what you're up to, newsletters, whatever you do. So how would they uh, do that? Get in your world?
Yep. They can email me. My email is Angela at aglphotography.net.
Okay.
Um, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or they can get a hold of me via Facebook.
Mhm.
Um, that's pretty much the easiest way. You can find me on Facebook.
Yeah.
Either just my personal or on my Facebook business page is uh, it's shortened down to AGL Photo instead of AGL Photography, but it's just AGL Photo.
Hmm. Well,
So
they all
those are really the two easiest.
got it. Okay. So Facebook, uh, go explore the fun of your website, send you an email, do some skywriting if necessary, right? Angela, call me.
Yeah.
And so I want to give you an opportunity just to share your parting thoughts as you've introduced us to the idea of intentional legacy photography, not just, oh, happen to find me, but an actual program. I love that you're doing that and all the things you share. But what would you like us to think about or take away from this amazing conversation?
Yeah, I think that if somebody wants to actually truly consider doing legacy sessions, it's not hard. I
Hmm.
think if they want to sit down, the first thing that they want to do though is be intentional about the type of program they want to have. Um, so that it's not just oh, I want to have a program and just be haphazard about what they're going to offer. You need to be intentional about what you want to offer your clients. Some people are just out there and they go out and they just photograph and they just hand over a disc. And
Hmm.
if that's what your business model is, then be intentional about it.
Mm,
Make money doing it, because there's a lot of work involved.
right.
So be intentional about it. That's not my business model. I wanted to provide my clients with something that they would have in their hands that they could pick up every single day and look at to remember.
Love it.
Because for me, I, what the impetus recently, because I actually have an article that was published in PP Magazine back in the end of 2024, I think,
Hmm.
somewhere towards the end of 2024, because I lost my heart. Um, and he was only 6. And so
Mm,
I hadn't gotten him into the studio to do nice portraits since he was a puppy. So I don't have any of those of him or he and I. And so I had written an article for the magazine about my legacy sessions and how that jump started me marketing them even more.
hmm.
Um, and I wanted something physical. I don't want to just go back and look at the snapshots I have on my phone because
Right.
that's all I have of him.
Hmm.
And so, you know, that's why I'm marketing the albums because I wish I had even because I don't even have something I can hang on the wall and look at other than my snapshots,
Right. Right.
but so make whatever you're going to do for a legacy session, just be intentional about it and think about what you would want if if it happened to you, so that that's what you're going to be passionate about for your clients. And
Thank you.
I knew that that's what I wanted, so
Hmm.
that's what I'm passionate about in giving my clients.
I love that. I love that. Well, Angela, thank you so much for saying yes. I want to remind my guests, I mean, my listeners, you're my guest, to stay tuned for my just a little quick wrap up summary. And I'm so glad that we were able to find this time to hang out together and to get to know you a little bit and have you pass on your heart for serving in this way because I know that our photographs and or our rewards, the money gets spent. We got to eat, we got to pay bills, but the satisfaction of providing something in the world that brings others comfort and joy, not just at Christmas, comfort and joy, is our reward. So, Angela, thank you for supporting people worldwide to think about doing this special kind of photography.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So that concludes my conversation with the amazing Angela Lawson, Lawson. And I asked her if she will mentor people one on one, and she says yes, she does take on some students every now and then. So if you're thinking, man, I'd really like to have just more time with her and coaching and teaching, she's available. So let's see, the quick wrap up. We talked about her fun experience with photographing a prairie dog. And I was thinking it was going to be a, a funny story, but it was a learning experience, and those are important too. And then we talked about her legacy sessions, and they're designed for senior dogs or animals or pets that have like a terminally ill illness and there's still time to get them photographed. She does promotions. I have a feeling she does a lot of things that it's just her habits, but social media. The Tilly Project is a website, and I did find that, and it connects people who have legacy animals that are not going to be around very long with people photographing in their area. Um, she networks with other services. And then I ask her some other tips, and she says the first thing she does is to find out what the the owner or owners would love, and then structures the session so that it is fun and uplifting and not too heart-wrenching. Her goal is always to create albums and wall portraits, which, if you've listened at all other times, I'm a big fan of those. Um, let's see. And she says not to worry about the fact that you might have some pain while you're doing this, or connect to the pain of the owners. And that by letting yourself feel what you feel, and comforting them, becoming kind of a part of their lives, you create a bond. And that bond will continue to last. She stays in touch with people. She follows up after about a month just to ask how they're doing. At some point, she checks in with them to see if they're planning to have a new fur baby. Um, so, that relationship building is something she's really good at, I can tell. And then she says we want to be intentional about what we offer our clients. Um, and her hot tip is to know the animal, find out the breed or the mix, the temperaments, what they can and can't do. And that, number one, establishes our expertise when we do that and makes the session easier because we know what to expect. I do that with children's photography because every stage of childhood, there's things I can do and things I can't do. And so we plan accordingly, and I prepare my clients for the fact that with a 14-month-old, you're not going to get 5 outfit changes almost ever. And with uh, kids, like if there's a newborn and a 2-year-old, the chance of getting a great photograph of just them together is pretty slim. So anyway, but this is about dogs today and pets in general. Anywho, well, thank you again. Please go to LucyDumasCoaching.com and sign up for a quick call. I also have a couple gifts there. My 10 big ideas for marketing in the real world and my 7 ideal client getting tips, something like that. That's it for now. Sending you out a lot of hugs and loves and wet doggy noses. Bye.